Islam and hashtag Discover Muhammad ﷺ, which are campaigns that, interestingly enough, blended the online with the on the ground. If you look at some of these banners, looking for the answers in life, Discover Muhammad. It's using here the banners in the street, but also using a website and Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, and his mother, Virgin Mary. Also here, hashtag who is Muhammad, got questions, get answers. This blending of the the website with the banner in the street is very brilliant, because not everybody is online. So they would say things like, I'm a professor, if I walk in the classroom, I'm the only one who's allowed to talk in the classroom. Hashtag, can you hear us now? I gave this interesting and wonderful TED talk, and everybody gave me a standing ovation. Hashtag, can you hear us now? So it's a way for them to push back against sexism and also Islamophobia at the same time, and to raise their voices. The use of humor again, hashtag Muslims report stuff. When Donald Trump was asked one time, what are you going to do about Islamophobia? And he said, oh, Muslims should always report stuff. If they see something, they should say something. So Muslims took to Twitter and created this funny campaign, hashtag Muslims report stuff. My mom cooks the same soup every single day. I'm reporting her to the authorities. Hashtag Muslims report stuff. And they went on and on. My husband was caught washing the dishes. Suspicious activity. I'm reporting him to the FBI. Hashtag Muslims report stuff.
Let us know when it's available. I'm sure many of us will have people we'd like to administer it to. All right, so let's, without further ado, welcome to deliver his opening statement, Mr. Rafat Hamzayev.
Thank you so much, Sami, and I would like also to welcome our audience. And as it was mentioned, today is the International Women's Day, and I would like to congratulate all. One click is enough to create an information matrix. Azerbaijan has fully restored its territorial integrity and also sovereignty in the last 4 years. And the fact that the vast majority of the population belongs to the Islamic religion, and also the ethnic majority is made up of Turks, makes it possible to use both the ideological tools. I mean, Islamophobia and also Turkophobia against Azerbaijan. As a result, we are constantly on the receiving end of such attacks. But how and when did it start? Azerbaijan regained its independence in the early 19th, and at the same time we were facing aggression from Armenia. And this was not only about the territory, but also about state and its people. Unfortunately, instead of hearing the truth about this war, about the realities, the world heard thesis from Armenia, formed by Armenia, and while we were under an information board. The most effective narrative against Azerbaijan was the alleged Christian-Muslim conflict in Karabakh. And in 2017, I had the opportunity to interview the Catholicos of all Armenians, Garidin II. At that time, 20% of our territories actually were under occupation, and along with the meetings between the leaders of states, religious leaders also. And during this interview with Garidin II, he mentioned that the meeting of religious leaders served to create a constructive environment for the meeting of political leaders. However, throughout the entire negotiation process, and especially in the 44-day war of 2020, we saw quite the opposite. Unfortunately, clerics were actively trying to create serious consolidation against Muslims in their public speech using hateful rhetoric. And it's also pity that during the 44-day patriotic war, the global media resources also seem to...
Of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, that brings a lot of examples to my mind as well. So when we open up for discussion, perhaps there'll be more opportunity to get into that. All right, let's hear now from our next speaker, Mr. Jamal Shayal. Please go ahead, sir.
Sorry, I don't have a presentation, but I felt people were maybe needed to kind of change of scenery so we can change tempo a bit. I'm not an academic as some of the previous speakers are, and I like to be a bit more practical when I discuss issues and talk about things. So before I start, actually, obviously we're gathering today on the backdrop of many things and at the beginning of some things, so the backdrop of a genocidal war that has gone on for several months now on the Palestinian people. One that people are looking at it from different perspectives, different angles, in terms of how it should be reported, what should we do, where is the solution. It's complicated. It's not really as a simple human. It's a lot easier just to look at things at their source and to try and break things down. And what we see today in Palestine is the manifestation of hatred that has been allowed to fester and foster and to grow without being challenged. And when we come to talk about Islamophobia, it is not difficult to see a similar manifestation happening on a wider scale in many different countries. In fact, we are seeing it happening. So whether we look at, for example, the targeting of Muslims in Kashmir, or whether we look at, for example, the concentration camps of Muslim Uyghurs in China, or whether we look at other forms of mass targeting of Muslims like the Rohingya, you will see that at the source or at the core of it, there is an element of this fear or hatred or whatever you want to call it of Muslims. And here it made me think of a couple of things when you said the title of this session being, digital Islamophobia. It's kind of strange, right? Because it was now about the digital age and AI and so forth, and you start trying to think, what is new? And really, there is nothing new in the sense that as humans, from the start of time, we have been communicating. Now, whether that communication was verbal, whether it then became through pictures and drawings or words or letters or then newspapers and radio and then television and so forth. It's just a different means, but ultimately the digital space that we live in now is just a development of the means, whereas the actual action of communication remains the same. Islamophobia itself also wasn't new. In fact, Islamophobia is as old as the religion itself. The Prophet Muhammad faced some of the most violent and aggressive Islamophobes that we have known. Those who tried to kill him, those who actually killed many of the first believers and tortured them, and also besieged them and tried to impose a famine on them for a long time and spread lies about them and so forth. So also it is not new. And as optimistic as I am as a human, allow me to also say it's not going to go away completely. The question that we have, and ones, whether it's as journalists or as academics or as activists or as whatever it is, what side do you really want to be on? Do you want to be on the side that sees an injustice and either helps it, or either actively helps it, or helps it by just staying silent, or do you want to be on the side that sees an injustice and actively opposes it, because ultimately you yourself may be at risk of having an injustice inflicted upon you. What the digital space offers you is a real-time ability to take that side, right? So either through using your own digital platform or your own access to digital space to counter some of the narratives that are made, that are purposefully curated to dehumanize and villainize Muslims so that when they are massacred, en masse, people don't really worry about it, they don't really care. To use your space to ensure that that narrative is corrected, that that narrative is challenged, and that an actual, more accurate one is done. Or you have your space where you will just purely use it to ignore and scroll through those things. Sally mentioned, for example, the very opening remarks of how very few cases of Islamophobia are reported. You can write something, or somebody can write a tweet or post something now that is as simple as saying, I call for a ceasefire. It doesn't say the word genocide. It doesn't say the word ethnic cleansing. It simply just says, please stop murdering children. And you will get hundreds, if not thousands, of pro-Zionists reporting you and maybe shut up, you will get shut around your property, right? Someone else can post a picture of, a woman in a hijab with terrorists in hiding. And we'll get the same amount of reports, and that person will not be impacted in any real way or shape, right? So to break it down in a very simple way, and this is what I, as a, let's say, practitioner of media, right? I do like to break it down ultimately, because as important as these conferences are, and it's important, generally as important as TV is in terms of coming up with longer-term strategies, I do not prefer to live in the here and now also, is for people to think about what they're doing in that space when they're talking about digital space in order to issue. Now, just very quickly, there was something that I was trying to look at today when we were listening to some of the sessions, and I know people have been somewhat the idea of what we're seeing today in Palestine with Islamophobia. Maybe it's not here at all. But I wanted to give two very quick examples. Yesterday I saw a video of Israeli soldiers in Khan Yunis mocking the call to prayer, mocking the Adhan. Right? And we have seen that every single mosque, literally, in Gaza has been bombed. Every single mosque in Gaza has been bombed. And we've seen also images of the Quran being desecrated by Israeli soldiers, prayer rites being used for when Israeli soldiers went to the toilet, essentially, to clean their pieces and so on. So the manifestation of Islamophobia, or of what drives types of fashion, is very clear. And it's actually universal, and if anything, if there is ever a common denominator between hate-filled messages, it often is Islamophobia. So we saw a report that was done about the Islamophobia industry in the United States, a very detailed one several years ago, that showed that the funders of the Zionist lobby were in tandem with those of the Islamophobia industry, people like Daniel Pipes and others that are there. We've seen that often the far right in Europe is also vehemently pro-Israel, whilst also vehemently anti-Islam. And why am I saying that this is important to show this? It's important because what we have failed to learn from the past, when you look at the darkest hours of humanity, so whether it is the Holocaust or whether it is other massive targetings of people, what we have seen, what we fail to see is that we're trying to target them purely based on our own personal interests. So if these type of people concern us, we'll stand up. But if it's others, it's not a big deal. But ultimately, the circle does come round in this country. So if I'm going to conclude with one, when we're looking at this, like I said, the digital space, let us try actually to see beyond the algorithm that it gives us. So usually if you think about your feed, the first thing that's going to come in your feed is your friends, your family, okay? But when you're thinking about using your social media space for a better cause, think beyond simply your friends and your family. Thank you.
And super jet lagged. So I just want to make sure I make sense. First, I would like to thank the organizers very much for all the work and the invisible labor. In my presentation on the case of Palestine and how digital Islamophobia takes place today and how it is counteracted by digital resistance and decolonization, I would like to use cultural studies approaches and focus on two interconnected issues. The first one is the political economy of Islamophobia in the United States to explain the relationship between Zionism and manufacturing Islamophobia in the United States, and two, message analysis of a case study to illustrate the manifestation of this interconnection on and offline. And it's a great segue from your presentation, so thank you for setting it up for me. The case study is the New York Times December 28, 2023 article, Screams Without Words, How Hamas Weaponized Sexual Violence on October 7 by Jeffrey Gettleman as the main author, author, and Anat Schwartz and Adam Siller. So in terms of the connection between Islamophobia and Zionism, it is now well documented that the organizations and parties involved in manufacturing Islamophobia are well connected and even funded by right-wing white supremacist organizations and vice versa. There is a wealth of empirical evidence of the connection between organizations supporting Israel and Zionism in general and those supporting Islamophobia that documents the overlapping board memberships among think tanks, for example, and concrete examples of Islamophobic tropes in pro-Israel propaganda.
Fantastic. Now becomes the opportunity for members of the audience here to pose questions to the panelists. Do we have microphones? Yes, we do. Okay. So we've already got some hands up. I saw the gentleman in the back, but maybe with his permission, since it is International Women's Day, can we start with ladies first and give a microphone to the lady in the front?
Thank you very much for an amazing presentation, everyone. My question to you, Ahlam, yeah? You spoke a bit about feminism, and today is International Women's Day, and you can't shy away from the fact that Israel is waging a war on women and children, given the fact that 70% of all the civilians killed in Israel on the attack on Gaza are women and children. So, and you spoke about feminism, feminists, trying to bring that, especially white feminists, trying to bring the attention to the accusations of rape conducted by Hamas. But where are the outcries on the death and the dire conditions that the Palestinian women are living in Gaza at the moment? Where are the outcries for feminists on that? Which links back to the dehumanization that Jamaluddin Muhammad, you were talking about, the dehumanization of Palestinians. Why doesn't their lives matter? Isn't this the ultimate example and the ultimate definition of Islamophobia when you find troops that champions the lives of the hostages, the lives of the women on one part, but if the same demographic category is killed, but they belong to Islam, then those lives are dismissed. Isn't this the ultimate example of Islamophobia?
Thank you very much for the question and giving me the chance to actually talk about this. That was my nice part. So first I want to invoke here, since again, we have some academicians, invoke Chomsky's and Herman's notion of worthy victims versus unworthy victims. And there is nothing as clear about this kind of dualism in treating, victimhood as it is specifically in the Western world in general, but the United States in particular, especially if you also compare it to Ukraine. And it's just unbelievable, the discrepancy in talking about Ukraine versus talking about Gaza. Talking about occupation in two regions very differently, as if Gaza was occupying Israel and not the other way around. Or, Ukrainians trying to defend themselves versus, Gazans being terrorists, although it's exactly the same political context, almost. So I wanted to start with that, so you're absolutely right. And because of that, and I'm part of the Palestinian Feminist Collective, what we did immediately is we launched a digital toolkit. And the digital toolkit has a lot of information, debunking all these, of course, false narratives with evidence, also explaining all the nuances of the stories, etc. And it also includes what you just said, calling out those white imperialist colonial feminists on their, actually, as you said, empathy for just one type of victims. And those are the Israeli victims, of course, ignoring totally all the mayhem, all the genocide that is unfolding in Gaza, and doing that on the contrary, actually, by adopting those narratives from the Israeli, the textbook of the Israeli blogging. They are in fact enabling and weaponizing the genocide against Palestinians. So one thing we did is actually we went to we protested in New York and other places in front of congresswomen who claim to be, of course, the leaders in women's rights, etc., and called them on that. And we tried to shut down even entrances to the New York Times itself after they published this.